All right, Stevie. I've been wanting you to do this for a long time.
I sidestepped you long enough.
Nah, it was a combination of us both and just life and so forth. But thanks for doing this, brother.
Yeah.
It means a lot. I'm going to take you all over the place today. The first thing I wanted to talk about, though, is I think a lot of people on social media, at least in our mutual sphere of real estate, know you from your home inspection business.
Yes.
And property inspection business correctly. It's such an important part of buying a piece of property in the process. And we know it's so important, but I think the public is confused often. I believe they are when it comes to home inspections and why they're necessary, what they cover, what they don't cover. You know, I had one guy say to me, is it like a required law that I have a home inspection? That's real estate law, right? I mean, that's where the misconception's at.
Well, a lot of what I hear too is after I'll finish an inspection, I'll hear, does it pass? This is not a pass-fail thing.
Yeah. So okay. So a home buyer, we'll go right into this. We'll get the mechanical stuff out first. A home buyer chooses to have a home inspection after they have put an offer and it's been accepted, and they're now heading toward the process of closing. They can choose a home inspector to do a home inspection for them. Talk about some of the benefits, maybe obvious and not obvious, for the home buyer.
So the obvious point is you have somebody who, like, that's what I do every day, right? So I don't know, the last count was like 2,200 inspections that I've done. Okay, so
wait a second. What?
Yeah. So
that much time has gone by. Wow.
Think about it this way.
Okay.
Since K2 started,
in
March of 19,
okay,
I have done 1,600.
Wow. Okay.
So take the prior 3 years that I was doing that for somebody else.
Right. Okay, so the point being, you've done a shit ton of them.
Yeah, just a few. I've seen a few things.
Yeah, and so obvious advantage is you're going to get a glimpse of the property's veracity before you ultimately close on it.
Yeah, so I tell people all the time, I'm here to tell you what you're buying. Because one, I have an eye and know certain things to look for. Where, like, example, if I am going to buy a used car, what do people do? They take their friend with them that's a mechanic to look over the car while they're there. Well, at least they used to. I feel like things have changed so much in the last 4 years. I'm that person that you're paying to look at this house and go through it. And it's not, a lot of people think it's, oh, well, you're looking to catch the seller lying about stuff. I'm not. There's been plenty of times I've been at inspections of somebody that's been in a house 30 years and I find something substantial that they didn't even know was going on.
Right.
Like, it happens. And people also think that, oh, if a home inspector finds anything, like, the seller better fix it. Like, literally every house has problems. We can go to my house right now and I could rattle off 10 different things that would be on a home inspection report of mine, with my house, but they're not a big enough deal to me for me to waste my time doing anything with. Now, when I go to sell my house, will I go address them? Of course, just to make things easier. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't affect my day to day.
Right, exactly right. And I think the benefit is to have a home inspector come in. They're going to do the assessment and provide the report, and then the buyer can make a decision.
Correct.
What is important to them? What in terms of importance, what needs to be possibly addressed now? Things that they can address 4 or 5 years down the line, or some very long-term things. But at least they're aware of them, right?
Exactly, and that's how I look at it. And that's one of the reasons I got into home inspections, because I felt like real estate clients, in many ways, were getting an injustice in some of the home inspection process, because no house is perfect. I do new construction houses all the time, and there's stuff wrong. New construction. Brand new. People haven't even moved in yet. Okay?
That's a real thing.
And there's issues. there's always issues. We're human beings, right? We build things. Things go bad. The tall tale statement is welcome to homeownership, right? If it can go wrong, it will at some point. And we're not there to beat people up. We're just there, at least me, I'm there to give a snapshot. Here's what we have. Here's the things that can be very expensive. Here's the things that are safety related. Take with it what you will, because everybody has a different comfort level of what is okay project wise, what they can do themselves, what they're going to hire somebody. You know, I could build a house from a foundation, right? I have those skills and that knowledge to be able to go through all of those things. Am I a subject matter expert on all of it? No.
Right.
But I've done enough construction to have the knowledge to do all these things. I've, taken enough classes, gone through enough things, talked to enough people. I'm not a massive component or fan of people just take a class and then turn around and inspect. I want to go talk to the subject matter experts. When I have questions about plumbing stuff, I don't go Google it and see what Google says. I call my friend who's a master plumber and say, hey, what do you think about this and why?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want to know what can go wrong, why it needs to be like this. And I'm not just looking at, this good, this bad. That's not real. That's not life. That's not what the construction trade is. There is good, bad, ugly, acceptable. All of those, giant range of things
right.
are existent in every house on the planet.
Right.
And you have to find where your comfort level is in there. And that's not for me to decide for you.
Bingo. And I think let's start there, because first off, the inspection is not required. So the state is not requiring you to do it. The Realtor Association is not requiring you to do it.
The only time anything is ever required is if they have a VA loan, a pest inspection is required. That's it.
So when a buyer chooses to hire you to do this inspection, they're doing it for themselves. It's a private transaction between
Correct.
you, the inspector, and the buyer. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. To unwind it a little bit, the buyer is getting this for their own protection.
Yes.
Right? It's a fee that the buyer pays you at the time of inspection. It's not a part of their closing costs,
Correct.
which will be paid at closing. This is a payment due at inspection.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is, because when you're a home buyer and you're going through with your agent, if there's an experienced agent such as myself, I will give my best knowledge of things I've seen, experienced in my past years as a realtor, but it's limited because that's not my specialty.
Correct.
My specialty is the valuation of properties and the procedure to get my client in there the correct way.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about why it's so important to have the inspection and not rely on people, whether it's family, whether it's an Uncle Joe, it's your buddy's electrician down the street, part-timer that wants to spitball it, right? Why is it so important to get an actual inspection done?
Because everybody thinks they know what they're talking about until it's time to actually know what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Are there people out there? Do people have dads or uncles or friends that could walk through a house and do what I do? 100%. Is that the majority? No. The only way that somebody could have the same impact as an inspector is if they are working within the trades or in some fashion of that sense consistently, because things constantly are changing, codes change.
Mm-hmm.
What is okay and what isn't okay changes. There's stuff like there are electric panels that are now obsolete, but if they were on an inspection report 5 years ago, nobody would have batted an eye.
Exactly.
So if you're not staying up on those things as they're happening,
right,
you're not going to know that.
Yeah, and I think that current knowledge base is part of the value that your industry brings to the real estate industry. It's a constant, I don't know, it's a constant confidence that we have for our clients that a professional is coming who is aware of what's happening today in regards to home construction, in regards to home codes and so forth, where the buyer is going to buy a house that has enough veracity and they can believe in the veracity. They're not going to be encountering issues that, while maybe quote unquote legal per code 7 years ago, aren't anymore.
And to circle back to that, right? The other misconception that many people have is, well, is that code? No, it's not today's code. Well, shouldn't it be in your report? No. If I inspected houses to today's code, every inspection report that I wrote would be 150 pages long.
Right.
It's not, that's not reality.
Yeah. So there's the difference between existing construction.
Correct.
And a new construction.
Yes. And like certain safety things that are easy to do, like handrails, changing to ground fault circuit interrupter outlets, things like that. Those things, as a house is sold and changed, should be updated.
Right.
Rewiring an entire house because it's not Romex wire, it's BX wire.
Right.
That's not reality.
Right.
Buy a newer house.
That's exactly.
Pony up some more money if that's what you want. Right? Like, this is what you get.
Yeah, and I think that's a misconception too. But I still go back to the beginning of it when we talked about the fact that there's misunderstanding that it's a required, somehow legal requirement to get the loan or to have the transaction closed by the county. This is a personal contract that you're engaging with a home inspector to be informed about the house that you're intending on buying.
Correct.
And in the process, would you not agree that your report's somewhat kind of almost like a user manual to the house too, another added benefit?
Yeah,
residual benefit.
And like that's the thing, right? So the report isn't just here are the problems. The report is, okay, here's the type of roof you have. Here's the furnace that you have. Here's how old it is. Here's how big it is. You know, same thing with air conditioning. What type of electrical's in the house? What type of plumbing's in the house? Like all of those things, at some point during your ownership of a house, you're going to need to know that information. Well, now you have a central point where it's all combined together that you can go back to.
Yeah, I say this oftentimes to my clients. It's somewhat of a user's manual to your house. There's a lot of people that don't know where the water shut off is in the house. Didn't believe me. Before I became a realtor, I didn't know any of that stuff. But I've had clients that you have worked with for years through multiple times throughout their home ownership have referred back to those reports. I mean, I've heard it multiple times. People use them, beyond the actual sale. It's their property. And again, it's the market has been so crazy the past couple of years too, and there are times where buyers, to be competitive, don't even have the opportunity to do a home inspection. Mm-hmm. But if at all, as I would say, most realtors recommend, if at all possible, if the market warrants or enables you to do it, get the home inspection. For God's sake, get the home inspection.
And during those crazy times, there was a lot of inspections that I did where the people told me flat out, like, hey, I can't ask for anything.
Mm-hmm.
This is just so that I know what the house is.
Right.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Like even if you have to forego the chance of, being able to walk away or being able to ask for things to be repaired or ask for more money, whatever, at least you know what you're getting. You're not walking in blind.
Get the inspection regardless, even if you can't use it as a negotiation tool. The other thing about real estate, and I know that you'll laugh when I say this because it's so true. Everything in this business is negotiable. Mm-hmm. I would say 99.9% of all things are negotiable. When a home inspection is done, there again, misconception. It's not pass or fail. It's not an either or. It's not a thumbs up or thumbs down. It is a report. It's the strength of the knowledge and service from the inspector conveyed into this report. And with this report, the buyer can choose to negotiate, adjust their offer, or can make informed decisions from that point on. The seller is under no requirement to do it. Everything is a negotiation, but it's easier to negotiate when you have the facts on your side.
Yeah.
That's the value of the report to me.
Well, and to me, that's one thing that I try to make very bluntly obvious in my reports. There is no opinions in my report of, well, I don't really like the way that this is, but technically it's not wrong. And blah, 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 blah. No, it's, okay, here's the issue, here's why, here's a photo of it, here's what can go wrong, and here's what could potentially be the fix.
Mm-hmm.
Make it very cut and dry.
Right.
I mean, I've been doing this almost 8 years, and I can count on one hand how many times people have called me to complain about something that I did. And then from that point, I can only think of one time ever in all of that it wasn't in the report and they just didn't read it.
Right. Right. I'm very familiar with your reports. I'm very, very familiar with your work. And the great thing about what you do from a realtor standpoint is it's very thorough from top to bottom, from roof to basement and everything in between. There's no question. And it's very matter of fact, so it's easy to read from the buyer's standpoint and ultimately from the sellers too, if it's presented to them in a negotiation. It's matter of fact, meaning it's easy to see obvious issues and also understand them and then look at what the potential, if we don't do anything, and the potential to get it fixed. It's very spelled out. It also is not written in a way that is alarmist, which is you're not there to use descriptions of a missing, I don't know, light switch plate.
Yeah, right. So think about that, right?
And turn this into an incredibly dangerous circumstance for the buyer.
So let's think about that. A missing plate cover can be extremely dangerous. It can be.
In theory, sure.
In theory, have houses burned down because a plate cover was missing? I guarantee it.
I'm sure of it, yeah.
Do we need to freak out because the 50-cent light cover isn't on there? No.
Bingo. Yeah.
Right?
That's it.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that's another thing that's missed. And within your industry, I think the inspectors that do not use, how would I describe appropriate brevity when they give their inspections?
Well, and let's think about it this way, right? Oftentimes inspectors at some point worked in a trade at some point, and that's kind of how they have transitioned into that, right?
Okay.
Not to say that people who work in trades don't have customer service skills. Some of them do.
Sure.
In general, they probably don't have the best. They certainly, in general, don't normally have any formal customer service training
right.
and how to talk to people and help people understand and things like that. Like
right.
prior to this world, I worked in a very customer service sales environment. So I've had a lot of actual sit in a classroom. Here's how you talk to customers. Here's how make sales. This is how you relate to people, right? Things like that. So I take a lot of that as I'm talking to somebody. I'm constant. If I'm explaining something to somebody, if they have deer in the headlights look, I know that I need to change the way that I'm explaining this so that they understand.
Right.
I purposely do not use big words and technically appropriate words for things sometimes. And I try to break it down so that anybody can understand it. Because I'm not there for them to be like, oh, well, this is wrong and you need to do this. I'm there so that they understand. And I think that that's kind of where a lot of things might get lost in translation because people don't understand, but they know the inspector said this is wrong. And so they're freaked out by it. So now they're holding on to something. But if you can break it down to a point that they do understand it, and they understand potentially how easy of a fix it could be,
100%.
They're going to feel much more comfortable.
100%.
So, like, to me, just going around the house being detail oriented and finding things that are wrong is this much of my job. I want people to understand what they're getting, not just here's a piece of paper that shows you what's wrong. No, I want you to understand it and know why, so that you can make an informed, educated decision moving forward.
And that's the whole part of the whole idea of getting a home inspection is to more accurately understand the quality of the property you're buying.
Right.
In the end, that's it, right? And how we get there is having a excellent inspector, which you certainly are, and also an excellent inspector who understands that conveying sometimes very technical things to the public needs to be done in a way where it's easily understandable.
Yeah.
And that's why, that's why you spoiled your agents, but quite frankly, because the inspections are done so well and the reports make sense, not just to the customer, but to realtors as well, because it's going to put us in a position that if the customer wants us to help them maybe negotiate the repair of something.
And can we talk about that for a second?
Absolutely.
Just reports in general.
Sure, for sure.
There's been plenty of times that agents that I work with have a listing and an inspection is done, and they don't quite understand, or the people are asking for weird stuff, so they'll ask if they can send me the report to look over and tell them my thoughts.
I've done it.
Right? And it happens. And agents that I work with all the time, absolutely, right? Because I'm more interested in building relationships with people,
sure,
having long-term people that I work with and clients, and that's the reason that I have been able to grow my business very organically. I have probably spent a total of $500 ever on marketing. And to the point that, last year when the market was humming, I was missing inspections because I did not have enough time in a day to get everything in.
Right.
And, you look at these reports, there's reports that I look at and I can't understand what the hell it's saying. And I know the subject matter better than, Joe client.
Exactly right.
How are they supposed to be able to read this and have any idea what the fuck you're talking about?
Because it's exactly what you just mentioned. The bottom line is you can be technically proficient at something, but if you have to convey that knowledge to laymen like myself, the general public, you have to be skilled enough to know how to communicate. And as you just mentioned prior, these folks could be very skilled, knowledge-based for what they're doing. But if you can't translate it to the client so they can understand, then the report's worthless.
Yeah.
The exercise of doing the inspection is worthless, and it will end up being a waste of their money.
Yeah. And
that's a big problem.
From real estate days, I can remember going to inspections. I knew, okay, this inspector's very good at what they do, but they can't explain for shit.
Right.
I need to be there to help translate for my client.
Right.
We shouldn't have to do that.
No.
Right?
No, not at all. Not at all.
And that's the biggest thing to me is there's brokerages out there, real estate brokerages out there that don't allow their real estate agents to go to the inspection.
Yeah, I don't understand that.
I don't understand it either. I think it's a major injustice, right?
Right.
I can very easily see. I know what agents are good and what agents are slimy and what agents are just transactional and things like that. I get to see kind of the behind the scenes stuff with a lot of stuff.
I think all home inspectors that have been doing it get that vantage point.
Right.
Yes.
And are all home inspectors honest and upfront? Absolutely not. Because
I would agree.
Somebody asked me about an inspector the other day, and I said, I don't really know. I've never met them personally, but I know some of the agents that they work with a lot. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I have done stuff for those agents, and I had the opportunity to do a lot of business with those agents, but I refused to bend from an ethical standpoint. They would call every time, hey, I really need this to go through. Okay. We all need everything to go through. Mm-hmm. No agent wants a termination. Mm-hmm. But what the house is what the house is, buddy.
End of story.
Period.
End of story.
I'm not going to glaze over a roof that needs to be replaced so that your deal can go through and you can jam money in your pockets and jam this deal down their throat. And then in 2 years, that person's now pissed at me because their roof needed to be replaced. So that, one, maybe they want to sue me. At the very least, they're going to badmouth me anywhere that they can. Mm-hmm. This is a very, very much who knows who industry.
100%.
I don't need that.
This entire industry works off of referrals. This entire industry needs to function, hopefully, in a competent way, because the industry is very dependent upon all the moving parts.
Yes.
Your industry is dependent on us. We're dependent on you. Mm-hmm. And if it breaks down ethically at any point in time, the damage is collateral. There's a lot of collateral damage. It's way beyond the agent and the inspector, who on that instance aren't being ethical. It spreads beyond that. And I think that's a problem that doesn't always get looked at, is what is the ultimate collateral damage when ethics break down in any part of real estate, for that matter, but especially when it comes to home inspections and the realtor.
Well, and that's the thing. And I think that, those, and let's be honest, the percentage of that going on as a whole is very small.
Very minimal.
Right?
Yep. I would agree.
That's what you hear about, and that's how real estate agents and home inspectors end up getting this bad rap. You don't need that. You don't need an agent. You don't need you don't need a professional, because they're all slime balls anyways. Mm-hmm. But that's not the truth.
Mm-mm. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. But again, this wheel gets the most grease, right?
Correct.
And that's like in anything in life. But without question, the number one concern for what you and I both do in our respective industries is to respect and honor the client and their wishes in a legal and ethical way, always. If we do that, if that's the focus, everything else just falls into place. That's it. If realtors and inspectors will put the money behind the transaction, not the forefront, right? If service is at the forefront, money will always follow you. You do good business and do good ethics and treat people great and keep their interests at the forefront, the money always follows.
Yeah.
But when people put money first and start putting money over clients, you see a client and all of a sudden there's a dollar sign over their head, and that's where the focus goes. Things always get messy and fucked up.
Mm-hmm. I mean, look, at the end of the day, right, the most I have ever done is, for 2 years, a very small handful of agents who were my core agents, who helped me launch my company because they gave me so much business. The most I have ever done to do anything to an agent is give them a Christmas card.
That's it.
Didn't buy them anything.
That's it.
Just hand wrote a Christmas card.
Yep.
I really want to thank you. You've really helped me. Blah, blah, blah. Didn't give them anything.
And I will tell you, that is a huge thing. In an era where all you got to do is turn on the news. This group is scratching this group's back, and they're in cahoots with this one.
Yeah.
Quid pro quo, and all those terms that the public hears all the time. No wonder the public's view of business in any capacity is sleazy.
Yeah.
Especially in our, whether it's attorneys and real estate agents. I mean, we don't have the greatest reputations.
Correct.
Oftentimes because we're not really understood. We're not good at explaining what we do as a whole.
Yeah.
Even your industry to agree. I think your industry, there's a lot of misconceptions on what you do. And I think it's a great opportunity for ethical agents and ethical inspectors to convey and show value in what they do, but it doesn't seem to be at the forefront all the time because we're all so busy doing our thing. And there's that misconception runs deep, you know?
Well, and that's the thing, right? There's been plenty of times people are like, oh, well, you know, the agent recommended, so, you know, you guys are probably together. Or maybe the fact is we're both very ethical people.
Bingo.
And we want to make sure that you're treated correctly. Like, my recommendation to anybody, if they call me and they want to ask 100 questions about what I do, by all means. I applaud those clients who call me and they want to hear about background and they want to hear, what do you do? And this and that. And I tell people all the time, go online.
Absolutely right.
Read reviews online that people wrote. Like,
Absolutely right.
Do your research. And if you come back to me, awesome. If you don't, I hope you found a great inspector. It's that simple.
That's exactly right. And again, I think consumers, for the most part, Steve, would you not agree? They're pretty, consumers are pretty savvy today.
They are.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly think that people are generally doing the due diligence. I mean, purchasing a home and the mechanics of doing that is a big decision in one's life. And usually I would think that most people are putting the time in to do their due diligence to make sure they're working with good people. And also, you know, I call it my E-team. This is my little marketing thing, but I've got my go-to inspector, my go-to lender, my go-to closing company. These are people that are my clients required to use you? I think there's been maybe 1-2 times in like 8 years now or 7 years I've been using you that someone has chosen their own inspector.
Oh, we're done.
but ultimately, if a real estate agent that you believe is ethical, right, and they take the time to have go-to vendors that they trust, and they're willing to put their name on the line, there's nothing sleazy about that. I'm sorry. To me, that's a very ethical way to go.
And that's the thing. If you distrust your real estate agent so much that you don't trust in the people that they're going to refer to you, you're working with the wrong agent.
100%. Yeah. If you are working with a real estate agent, that's a great point. It's a great point. If you're working with a real estate agent, but you don't trust their vendors, if you inquire about them and you don't trust them or don't trust their opinion, right, then you are indeed working with someone that probably doesn't sit well with you. Maybe you need to find an agent that you will trust enough with your business, but also to find appropriate vendors in the process.
Correct. I mean, it's that simple.
Yeah. I mean,
if you can't trust them, and you not trusting them may not even mean that they're sleazy. You just may not click correctly.
Correct. Yeah, and again, I think I had a very wise agent tell me years ago that, you know, it's not personal. It's like if you have a conversation with a potential new customer and they don't choose you, although you're very confident in your own ethics and you think you presented yourself right. You know, when you're a young agent, you know, it stings when you don't get a listing appointment, right? It stings. But in the end, it was a good lesson to learn. It didn't mean that you weren't good enough to work with them. They just, for whatever reason, because of personality types, because of maybe goals, directions, whatever, they didn't click. And you're going to have that. And that's very symptomatic. Case in point, like if I had a lender I was working with, and I was working with a customer, and my go-to lender, I have a couple of them, and I said, here's a couple that I will give. They're all great. They kind of specialize in different things. And my client said, well, you know, we heard of this one. The other one we didn't hear too great things about. And I was like, okay, well, again, they've been great for me and my clients. I'm not aware of anything like that at all. I'm not saying it isn't impossible. It could have happened. But to my knowledge, the work they've done for my clients keep me referring them, and for no other reason. But you as a buyer have the right to choose who you want.
Yeah.
You know, but at least I would say take the recommendations of your realtor under advisement.
Correct.
My clients have done very well with that. And I call it my E-team because the process of real estate, as you well know, Steve, it can be very complex. At best, there is a slight level of complexity. A lot of moving parts in the process from going to start to look for a home all the way to closing. So if I can surround myself with great people to take care of business and do what's necessary for my clients without me even taking a second look at them. When I give a client to Steve and they work out an inspection day and we go to that inspection, by the time it's done, the reports, everything is right, dressed right. I have high confidence that they're going to understand the veracity of that house, good or bad. Mm-hmm. I don't have to worry about that. Same thing with lenders. Same thing with my closing company. That's a solid benefit that a realtor's providing a customer. When you have a team of vendors around you with high confidence and high integrity, that's a great package for a consumer to have.
Yeah.
It's a great package. You know, as opposed to going out on your own and just picking people out of this phone book. And again, trust your realtor enough that if you're going to work with them, then trust their vendor. It'll make your life easier.
Right, and that's the thing. And there's nothing wrong with asking people questions. Don't think just because, Uncle Joe used you to buy a house and he says, oh, Eric's the best. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean I can't ask you questions and see maybe if you're not the best for me.
Bingo. He's the best. Well, is he the best for me?
Like,
that's the issue.
And any agent or an inspector or, lender, whoever that gets shitty when a client decides not to work with them because they want to work with somebody else, one, they're way too insecure to be in this business.
I was just going to say mature, insecure, same thing. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Number two, they're probably not the best if they're all pissy about it.
Well, they're coming from it sounds like they're coming from an area of desperation.
Yeah. Like if people call me and they're like, hey, I want to do this and that and this. Okay. Here's where the house is. This is what it's going to cost. Well, this person said they could do it for that. Okay. Go use that person.
Absolutely right. Yeah, there's no, if you take the personal out of it, look at it as a business transaction. And of course, you want, would you not agree? You do want ultimately the client to get what they want.
Absolutely.
And if it's not for you, if it isn't with you, great. Fine. If they're happy and they find it with someone else, for me, it's all the better.
I just want people to be taken care of.
Absolutely. And
do I want to be able to do it and make, $1 million? Sure.
Absolutely right. Yeah, you want to be successful in business.
Yeah.
But at the same time, let me talk about the ins and outs of actual inspection. So, talk about roofs for a second. Western Pennsylvania here. I think that the roof is obviously one of the big three. I say when people worry about, the condition of the existing house, right? If a house is, you do roof and some 2-story roof inspections by drone where available. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. Meaning you send up a drone up there as opposed to you getting on those roofs and taking your own life into your own hands. Like the olden days, right? What generally do you see with standard tiled roofs? I'm not talking slate or any of that, just a regular
like asphalt shingle roof?
Is that what they call it, asphalt? Because you hear composition a lot, asphalt. Is the same thing?
They are essentially. Are they technically different? Yes, but people call
the most common roofing tile that we're familiar with
is a composition shingle.
Okay,
it's made of multiple different materials, but we call them the generic term is asphalt shingle.
Asphalt, okay,
because that's what's at the core of it is asphalt impregnated membrane.
There you go. Sound a little bit. I don't know what it sounds like there. A little bit dicey there, Steve. So what are you generally looking for when you go up there with a drone?
So, really, you're looking for, like, wind-blown shingles. So if stuff is loose and lifted, you're looking for the general wear. So shingles will start to wear over time, and they tend to show that on that edge, that front edge.
Is that where the granules get stuck in the gutters?
Correct.
Okay.
So the granulars in a shingle is what gives it its longevity.
Okay.
So they start with like a fiber mesh material, soak it in asphalt, and then they pour that granular on top. So that fiber mesh gives it strength to hold kind of everything together. The asphalt gives it its water resistance, and then that granular on top of it gives it its longevity.
Okay.
Because if you just took asphalt impregnated fiber and put it down, the wind, the sun, the rain, the hail would destroy it.
Okay.
In no time.
Okay.
So that granular being on there extends that wear life.
All right.
So as that starts to wear off, then it starts to wash away that asphalt off of that fiber. So if you look at shingles and you can see like white strips at the ends, it's because it's starting to wear away. And just because you see white strips doesn't mean, oh, the roof's about done. They'll actually start to wear that front edge as early as 5-7 years.
Okay.
That'll start to wear, and it's expected.
Got it.
As it kind of works its way through its life cycle.
Okay.
And there's 100 different directions it can go. You see shingles that are ripply. You see shingles that are curled up. And everybody has always thought, well, whenever shingles curl, that's because the roof's bad. No, that's actually because ventilation is bad and the shingles are baking in place.
Got it.
So, like, there's a ton of technical stuff that the average consumer doesn't really need to know.
Right. Right.
Why bore them with a bunch of stuff and load them with technical jargon when you don't need to?
Got it.
Explain it in a simple fashion.
No doubt about it. And I would venture to say, I can tell you for good reason, the truth is, before I became a realtor, I didn't know most of this stuff. You know, it isn't stuff that the average person's going to learn if you're not in the trade.
Yeah.
You know, you're just not going to learn that.
It's not worth it, right?
No, it's
you know,
exactly
okay,
right.
this roof is going to last, 30 years, 40 years.
Right.
That's how long it should last.
Right.
But there's so many variables that go into that, too.
Well, like the thing I learned, too, about flashing. That's where the shingle meets the chimney generally, right? And
so flashing's in a lot of places, but that's where people generally think of it the most.
And sometimes water, if the flashing erodes over time, then the water gets in between the flashing and the chimney, or the towel, the roofing towel in the chimney. Is that right?
It can. So typically flashing is not going to erode. It's made out of aluminum or copper. There's some old stuff that's like galvanized or even tin or lead. But like all the new stuff that we use is all aluminum.
Okay.
So it lasts.
Got it.
Like your roof could potentially be replaced and the flashing not need to be replaced.
I think we see a lot of water that will run and get behind walls where the chimney's at over years. You see
and it's any penetration through a roof is a prime spot for water. Because you have a penetration through that covering. Because when you put the shingles on, they're 18 inches long.
Right.
But once they're all in place and the sun bakes them, that's one solid sheet.
No doubt.
They stick together. They have tar strips on them that stick them all together all the way up the roof. So if you have no penetrations through all that, your chances of leak are quite slim.
No doubt.
But it's those penetration points, whether it be a pipe or a chimney or a vent or whatever that's coming through the roof, all of those spots are your most likely places that have a leak. One of the biggest things that you see with chimney flashing is people just don't do it the right way because it takes a lot of work to do it the right way. So chimney flashing should actually be they should cut a groove into the brick or into the mortar joint and the flashing be slid in there and then sealed.
I can assure
and they
the
don't
ones
do
I've been
that.
associated with that wasn't done.
They
that
run
way.
it up against it and they just run silicone across the top of it. Well, silicone breaks down.
Right.
The sun bakes it. It breaks down.
Right.
Eventually it's going to start to
It
leak.
loses the seal between the brick and the
Correct.
aluminum.
So it'll open up and then it allows water to get down in there. Whereas it being set into that mortar joint, is it definitely not going to leak? Not necessarily, but your chances are a hell of a lot lower.
Got it. Another thing we see a lot of is we go all the way to the basement now and we look at the water in the basements. And oftentimes what I've learned from you over the years is one of the immediate culprits that come to your attention is something you almost check right away is how is the gutter and the rainwater draining, and is it draining toward the house, and is it coming through the foundation because of improper draining or improper landscaping around the property?
Correct.
That was a huge learning curve for me.
Let's start this conversation with, this is Western Pennsylvania. It is a very wet climate. Our housing inventory is fucking old. And basements get wet.
You don't say.
Okay.
You don't say.
If you want a dry basement, you better buy a house that was built after like 2005.
Amen to that. Yeah.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
The house was never designed or intended to have a dry basement from the moment it was built. So unless at some point somebody has come in and done some extensive work, sometimes you're going to get some moisture in the basement. That doesn't mean that there should be a fucking river flowing through the basement, right? We have a major problem in that case. But a little bit of people will spaz out over moisture in a basement. It's going to happen. You're going to have to spend tens of thousands of dollars to keep it from happening.
Amen.
Okay?
Amen.
But yes, the easiest solution, look outside. Do your downspouts run away? Do you have a clogged downspout that's dumping half of the roof's water into one spot? I mean, it's dumb logic that people just overthink.
Mm-hmm.
They immediately go to, well, I got to put in a French drain.
It can't be
Slow down.
Yeah, it can't be.
It might be the $5 downspout connector before you spend $10,000 to put in a French drain.
Amen.
Slow down. One step at a time here, okay?
Yeah, that was a big eye opener for me too. And you know, when you tell a homeowner or a new or a home buyer that the solution to a problem is to correctly landscape around a property where, you know, the landscaping slopes away from that property as opposed to sloping into the property, that's a lot better of a solution than putting in a interior or exterior French drain system.
Correct. And don't get me wrong, there are properties out there, especially in Pittsburgh with all the hills and stuff, that you can't effectively do that.
Mm-hmm.
And in those cases, maybe the answer is a French drain.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, that can be done, and it will at least significantly mitigate the issues of water in a basement. Now, if you have a stone foundation, forget it.
Mm-hmm.
French drains, interior French drains, or spending a bajillion dollars on the exterior. Yeah, sandstone foundation. Forget it. The French drains, significant amount of money spent is the only way you'll ever make it dry.
Right.
They were sellers, man. It was never intended to be living space the day that house was built.
Yeah, and it's funny on a personal level. I have this old Victorian style. You've been there. We've never had any water, and it's a huge sandstone foundation, but it's very thick. Maybe it's just how thick it is. I don't know, or maybe what the topography is. It's kind of flat there. But we've been very, knock on wood, very lucky. Just haven't had any water issues in that house. But it's old sandstone, which is a whole nother level of concern and care, you know, which I guess a little bit above my pay grade. But in terms of foundations in general, we are so drunk on man caves and drunk on finding extra ways to put finished spaces in the houses to create more living space, right? That's not entirely a Pittsburgh thing, but around these parts, that's kind of like a thing, right? Mm-hmm. It's somewhat unrealistic for us to believe that just because we're going to panel and finish our basement that it's going to be waterproof. And there's a disconnect with the public there. They think as soon as they put up the drywall and some insulation against and maybe even a plastic vapor barrier, right, that's going to solve my water issue. You got to solve the water issue before you ever cut your first 2x4.
Correct.
Why do we not get that?
Because everybody's so interested in, really, I think really what it comes down to is everybody's so interested in, look at me, look what I have, look what I can do.
So it's a show off thing in terms of the.
Well, and I think in part, and in some aspects, it's a necessity, right? So people are in houses that they can afford.
Certainly. Their
family grows. They need some more space, but maybe they can't afford that step up. Maybe something happened in life,
right?
That path they didn't think, and it becomes a necessity to get there. Well, just do it in a logical fashion.
Right.
I mean, like, the neighborhood that I grew up in, they were all like 1910 to 1925 houses, right? Everybody had unfinished basements, but everybody like painted the block and put indoor-outdoor carpet down or painted the concrete floor, and boom, they had a finished basement and it was a game room. What's wrong with that?
But it was also able to wipe up water too,
Correct.
without damaging.
Right? And what's wrong
done.
with that? Like, it's a basement. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, it's extra space. You're not being taxed on it.
That's for sure. Yeah, it is fascinating because I mean, maybe it's just the culture, like the culture we're in now, where man caves have been like a thing for almost 20 years now. Maybe that's I don't know, but you see a lot of it when you show buyers homes, and
and there's a place for it. Don't get me wrong.
Certainly,
there's absolutely a place that basements should be livable spaces.
I would agree.
There is a level of house that you get to that it's an expectation.
I would agree.
And I think that falls into the American way now, well, has been for quite some time, is leverage, get as much as I can, when maybe that's not the answer.
Well, maybe we're starting to see that now. You know, I mean, like, desperate times will create desperate solutions.
Yeah. I mean, just live within your means.
Yeah, it's not the American way, though.
I know.
You know, it's I think the housing market right now is a prime example of that.
Well, and I'll give you an example of just a personal example of like why that's important. So when I bought the house that my family is in now, when we bought that house, I worked for a Fortune 500 oil company. And things were looking great. We got our mortgage pre-approval and everything. We were approved for this number.
Of course.
And I said, fuck that. We're only spending this. Right? And people were like, well, why so far under? I said, because if some shit goes down, I don't want to lose my house over it.
Right. We
buy the house. 8 months later, I lose my job. Guess what? We're still in that house.
Exactly right.
I was able to start over. Thank God my wife had a decent job, right? But we were able to afford that house on one of our salaries.
Right. Well, that's not the American way today. You know, it's not. I mean, I think we're still resilient. I think the American public is still relatively resilient and all that stuff.
Yes.
About being Americans for sure. But in terms of what we somewhat expect of others for normalcy anymore is, you know, living beyond our means. It's kind of, it's baked in.
Well, and I think it's only going to get worse, right? So I have a 17-year-old son, and he watches all this bullshit on YouTube, and he's like, I need this, and I need this, and I need these shoes, and I need this, and I need... Slow the fuck down, dude. All right? Slow down. Like, you don't need $150 injection foam fucking slide-on sandals. Those cost 10 cents to fucking make. They look like shit. They're uncomfortable as all hell. I've tried them on. Why? Because some name is attached to it. And don't get me wrong, there was some of that, like, to a point when I was growing up. But the stuff wasn't. It was absurd.
I don't think we were inundated with as much of it. It was,
and we weren't.
It was out there. I mean, they're getting like lambasted every time they turn around. But let's go there. So, you know, the youth today, from my observation, is that they're certainly being pummeled with social media, the reels, and the way that things just continually come to them. And it isn't just the youth; it's all of us for the most part. But we also have to, at some point, take some responsibility because we're complicit to giving into the system, too, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, I don't hear a lot of people willing to take that responsibility.
Well, right, and it all comes down to I want my kid to have it better than I had it.
Bingo.
We, in our generational world, and we're slightly different generations, but we're close, we fucking took that to an extreme. And now our kids are entitled douchebags.
I can't argue, man, in theory, in principle. I mean, like,
right?
It's funny, you know, we we're so quick to judge the younger generations, but we are the idiots who created.
Right, we did.
But it was all under that guise that we want more for, like, my generation especially. We want more for our children than what we had. And then when you unwind it and you really look at it, like, we had enough.
Yeah.
And we were not as distracted. We really knew what it was like to go read a book. We kind of knew that was part of, like, life. You know, there were some of the things that slower world, Steve, that, you know, I won't say that they were better. I definitely won't say it was worse.
Yeah. I'm with you.
And I'm not sure that they're getting a lot of that now. So I can't leave. I can't take the onus off of the human who's giving into the system either. You know, it does suck. We are all somewhat addicted to phones and big screen TVs and all the technology comes to some really cool shit. But at the same time, it's just too easy to say we don't have any choice. Of course you have a choice.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example, right? So we're in the process of buying, like, a travel trailer. Take the kids camping. So we went camping a couple weeks ago, and we're doing our thing. My 5-year-old didn't even think about his technology until, like, we went into the cabin at the end of the night. We're running around. He's catching fish. He's looking at, you know, frogs and turtles and, like, just totally immersed in it.
Yep.
We didn't do that with my older son. We just didn't have that opportunity.
Got it.
Right? Or we didn't take advantage of the sections of opportunity to do that, right. I should say. Right? He'll come out for a little bit, then he disappears. And he goes inside. And I walk in, I'm like, what are you doing? Well, I'm just sitting here on my phone. Put your fucking phone down and go experience life in person. IRL, how you call it.
Wait, what's it now?
IRL, in real life.
Okay.
Okay, they have a term for it because they don't do it.
Okay.
They can't have a fucking a face-to-face conversation. They'll sit next to each other and text each other.
No doubt.
Like, it's just it's gone too far, and we need to find a way to, and we tell people unplug, right? And then we're talking about camping is the greatest because we can just unplug. I just leave my fucking phone because my phone goes off all the time, nonstop, right? And that's how I make my living, so it's hard for me not
Certainly.
to reach for it.
I feel your pain.
Right? That could be money. And the wife and I are talking, and then we're talking about satellite internet for the trailer, and I'm like, wait a minute. We're doing this to get away from that shit. No. Like, we're saying, like, this is great because we can unplug. And it's to relax and get away from all this technology. And then here we are talking about fucking spending money to put the technology with us while we go.
Oh, 100%.
Why would we do that?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Right? But it's there, and you're like, well, this is kind of cool.
Exactly.
Well, it would be convenient, wouldn't it? Yeah, but let's face it. The convenience side of it would be used less than we can just sit here and finger bang our phones all night.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. Yeah, we are really in a situation now where, in my humble opinion, we've bounced this around on this podcast. I can't tell you, Steve, like, well over 100 plus shows of the 350 we've done. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but this is what I honestly believe. This is a physical reality. If I bust this light bulb right now, it's going to shatter and create a mess. This is the physical world we are in, right? This is the physical world. To my understanding, this is the real thing. The web and the phones and all that stuff out in the interwebs, the internet, that is the virtual world. And from my standpoint, that's like an accessory to life. That's how I always viewed it. I'm telling you now, I honestly believe that this physical world is now the minority for experiences for a lot of humans, and the majority of their experience is happening out there in the ether on the web.
Yeah.
That's now the heavier reality.
Well, and then the whole COVID thing, really, if you look at it from that perspective, right? The whole COVID thing where all these people are now working virtual and it's all these Zoom meetings, it's just going to make it that much fucking worse. Because
it
let's
has.
face it, these companies aren't going. They realize they can be productive without spending billions of dollars a year on offices,
warehousing people.
Yeah. Oh, well, we can cut all this money and they can work from home. And in a lot of aspects, they're much more productive.
Are they?
Well, maybe. I don't know. I'm more productive working from my house if I lock myself away.
Well, yeah. It also, I will say to that point, do you think if there's a significant level of maturity within the individual, they can be more productive?
And I think that that's a lot of it
But it's
too, right?
subjective, though.
It is. Nonetheless, they're doing it, right? Mm-hmm. They're not going to go back to all this office space.
No.
Look at all this money they can save.
Of course. Of course.
It's dollars and cents. It's logic.
Of course.
Right? And people get pissed off about, well, a company doesn't need to make more money. Well, that's why they exist.
Mm-hmm. That's why you have a job.
If you could go to your job and do the same amount of work and make more money doing that same amount of work, would you fucking do it? Mm-hmm. Don't lie to me and say that you wouldn't.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. That's exactly right.
It's cut and dry.
It is cut and dried, and this is where the Eric McKenna Project has made our mark for one reason only, because I think COVID didn't save us, but it took the show in a whole different direction, because I think everybody was looking inward now and realizing this virtual world is taking over.
Yeah.
And time in and time out, again and again and again, I hear it, whether it's you, whether it's anyone that comes on here, it's like they're all seeing it, all in different ways. But the physical world, like we grew up, go listen to music and go hang out with your girlfriend and go get a bite to eat, or, go to the mall or go to a park, go to a baseball game.
Well,
that stuff is the minority now.
Well, and like my son, like it baffles his fucking mind that in the summertime, I would leave the house at like 8, 9 o'clock in the morning and I wasn't back until the streetlights came on. How did you eat? What did you drink? Like, we just figured it the fuck out, man. You find a goddamn water hose that's on, and you get some water. Like, we didn't have anybody pampering us and patting our ass. Like, we were just out there.
Well,
I can remember breaking my fucking ankle 2.5 miles from my house and walking home. I didn't have a phone to call my dad and be like, "Oh, I'm hurt. Come get me."
We were built.
I can't do it. You know what I mean?
Built different.
Like, it was what it was.
We were built different. We were built different for sure. I mean, you could say physically, oh, no, we weren't. Well, in terms of like how our view of life was and what we were willing to take on and accept at that young age, we were built different compared to today.
And granted, we have all had a hand in that.
Certainly.
One of the best lines that somebody ever gave me is they were a vet. And we were discussing why they got out, and they asked me why I got out, and we were talking. And it came down, they said, for lack of a better term, I got out because of the pussification of America.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, we didn't train to do our jobs. All we did was sit in classrooms to learn about this person has feelings and worry about this and worry about that and worry about this and how you talk to people and what you do and this person feels bad and this and that. He goes, if we would have had to go to war at that point, we're fucked because we don't know our jobs, but we know how to pat each other on the back.
Yeah, and I think that we and now you fast forward that. I'm guessing you heard that a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you fast forward to today, and it hasn't gotten any better. Yeah. If anything, it's gotten any worse. And that's where...
it's not, and don't get me wrong, everybody's entitled to feelings. I 100% believe that. You can feel how you want to feel.
Yeah, you're entitled to them. Yeah.
Okay. But sometimes feelings are going to get hurt. And depending on what you're doing, if you join the military, you better plan on your fucking feelings getting hurt. It's going to happen.
Of all places, especially there, because order is a must for the military to work. End of story.
Correct.
And order comes inherently with hurt feelings. Inherently.
It's going to happen. You're going to get your feelings hurt. And
it's the one place
and how you learn how to internalize that and deal with that and maybe have a conversation with somebody. Mm-hmm. Everybody can move forward instead of throwing a fucking temper tantrum about it. Mm-hmm. And everybody around you has to change everything. Maybe you're the person who needs to go and say, hey, Eric, I didn't really appreciate when you said this, and this is why.
Yeah.
Do you think that I understand where you're coming from, and I get why you did that, but maybe for me, could we try this? Mm-hmm. But that's not what anybody does.
So, right, because to do that requires a couple of things. Number one, it requires humility, okay? Even though you don't think you're in the wrong, you have to have humility to approach in a calm fashion those that either disagree with you or you may not like, right? To approach them correctly for a civil outcome, it takes a level of humility. Sometimes a little, sometimes a lot. We have none, generally speaking, with society.
Yeah, and it's across the board.
100%.
I mean, it's insane to me.
Yeah, the thing is, though, we see what's wrong. All of us see what's wrong, and it's pretty obvious. And I think even those who are really in the muck, like dealing with this, I say like the hurt feelings dealers that are out there that make a living off of it, exploiting it, right? They know it's wrong. But to start the ripple, to get it moving in the right direction, to change the path we're going, again, comes back to, someone has to have the humility on a big scale to stand up to the nonsense. And is it bravery? Is it humility? Is it insight? Is it a want for civility? I don't know. But whatever it needs to get the tide moving the right way, it takes something that I don't think most of us are prepared to do right now. For whatever the reasons, we don't seem prepared that we want to do it because our lives are too easy, because it's maybe too much fun to fuck over people online because there's no repercussions, maybe.
Oh, and that just drives
I don't know, but we're not willing to make the civil change. That and the fact that's what bothers me.
And maybe that's the problem, right? We have an entire generation that grew up being able to run their mouth and talk shit online with no fucking repercussions. And they didn't get punched in the fucking mouth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I know that growing up, if I went and ran my mouth to the dude that's bigger than me, I'm going to get my ass kicked.
Yeah, there was a pecking order. And when you talk about that pecking order, there is a generation who is ill-equipped to have a civil conversation about that pecking order because immediately they will be offended. Yeah. Well, there's no pecking order. That's either racist or that's genderist or there shouldn't be a pecking order. Well,
and don't get me wrong.
There was an order in society.
Correct. And don't get me wrong. There's fucking bullies out there and there's pieces of shit out there.
1,000,000%.
And they, by no means am I going to say that there isn't racism and genderism and all those things. There 100% is.
Correct.
And I think that it's vile and disgusting and ridiculous, but I don't think that is... I know that that's not the majority.
No. And I think that is the crux of the issue. It's the slime dealers, the people that are the most vocal, the most caustic, and the most cunning at times because they will use the hurt feelings of others to manipulate things in a negative way on all sides of the aisle. Far right, far left, any direction you want to point. But it's only I believe it's only the small percentage of people. The rest of us, wherever you fit in on that scale, middle, left or center, wherever you're at there, we have way more in common. That's what my good friend Rocco Cozza says. We have way more in common than we have disagreements on, right?
Absolutely.
If we sat down and talked about it and finding common ground, that's possible. We could eliminate these crazy extremists on both sides. We could eliminate them if we chose to do it.
It's absurd to me that there are families that don't speak to each other because they have different political views. Are you fucking kidding me? Get over yourself.
That's a prime example. That's a prime example.
Get over yourself for 10 seconds and fucking be a human being and not a goddamn robot and talk to your family.
family, friends, even, there's no reason in the world. Like, case in point, there's always been caustic political behavior going back decades, probably centuries, but not on a wide scale like we see now. So I can only speak from my selfish little world. And the 70s and 80s, we were aware of politics to a degree. I lived in a primarily Democratic town, a little mill town, and we knew there was an election usually once a year, and maybe twice. I guess you have a general and a primary every year. Usually it's for the House or the Senate or the presidential or maybe a local election. But twice a year, they may walk around and hand you a button maybe, or someone might have a little label that says, I'm a Democratic committee person, or whatever. It's the only time we heard it outside of the news once in a while. But that was the extent. We didn't wear our political affiliation as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
We just didn't do it.
And so
that's not how the world works.
Like, Trump was president for 4 years, and for 4 fucking years we had people bitch and whine. Biden's been president for nearly 4 years. Mm-hmm. And for 4 fucking years we're hearing people bitch and whine. Okay, Trump lost, Biden won. Let's move the fuck on. Okay, Trump won. Let's move the fuck on. Mm-hmm. Now, let's figure out how to get together for the betterment of all. And quit fucking arguing like little fucking schoolgirls.
And is anything that you see, let's just take the major 2 networks, the ones that the biggest blowhorns, right? The megaphones, Fox and CNN, the 2 biggest, right? Do you see anything on those newscasts? Because I know you peek on both of them. I know you do. I peek at both of them too. Anything on there that is a kumbaya moment?
Never.
They are preaching to their audience what they think their target audience is, and they're stirring up more shit than probably we are as citizens.
Yeah. 100%.
I don't see anything on those quote-unquote newscasts that will even start the dialogue.
Well, and that's half the problem, right? Because there's no such thing as unbiased media anymore. It doesn't fucking exist. And these companies that say we're unbiased, no, the fuck you're not. Because it's all about money.
There's no money in it. Yeah. There's no money in it.
It's all about money. They're all biased. Mm-hmm. Where do you get your information? What is fucking true? Nobody knows. The generation coming up, as we've talked about, has always had everything directly in their fucking face. So they see it. They believe it. Remember the commercial?
Okay.
She's a model. It was on the internet, so it must be true. That's the generation that's coming up. They see it on the internet, it must be true.
Yeah, and that goes back generations prior, because there were certain portions of the society, not groups, but just certain portions of people who would watch so much television that they would believe anything on TV was true. It's always kind of been there, but not on a wide scale.
Yeah.
Like, I think for the most part, most people can discern that television was television. But most people can't discern seeing something on the web and it not being true.
Well, and
you see what I mean?
And I think that it's just become so integrated into everyday life. The internet, television, all of it.
But why has the political part been so integrated into, like, case in point, like, when? Oh man.
I mean, where I can remember it becoming heavy is it kind of started with the 2008 presidential election.
Okay.
And then I would say it was very similar in 2008 than it was in 12.
Uh-huh.
And then in 16 was insane.
It went batshit, yeah.
It just went nuts. And I don't know if it's because Trump was involved and he's such a polarizing figure. He is.
Plus, he was an outsider to the whole game.
Yeah.
At that time, especially.
Which, if you look at it from the 1,000 degree, no wonder all of Washington attacked him.
Yeah.
They don't want that.
He's a threat.
He's a threat to their everything. Mm-hmm. Good or bad, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Mm-hmm. I'm not, whatever it is. But he was a direct threat.
So you could see where all the caustic behavior, and then you had the pandemic, which didn't help anything.
Which just made it all worse.
It amplified it.
It did, 100%.
Yeah.
I have never been a heavy political person during the pandemic stuff. I was stuck. I was sitting at the house. I wasn't allowed to work. I didn't have anything to do, and I start watching stuff, And then I get fired up seeing stuff.
Oh, it was the first political conversation.
That's-
You, in our friendship, going back almost 10 years now, it's the first time you and I ever had a political conversation. Didn't happen until 2020.
Yeah, and I was so frustrated with what I was seeing and hearing and everything that was going on that I just kind of lost my shit. And then I started to pay closer attention. Now, I've always paid attention to politics. I joined the Army when I was 17 fucking years old. Mm-hmm. So I had to pay attention to it. Mm-hmm. My life kind of depended on it.
Certainly.
Right? For a period of time.
Certainly.
But it just, I don't know. It just got so fucking out of control. And I don't know how, as a society, we can go back to everybody just get along, and we don't all have to have the same opinion. I have plenty of friends who have totally different opinions on things, and I know that there are certain friends that I have to stay away from certain topics because they're going to go down a rabbit hole, and that's not why I'm friends with them. It has nothing to do with that. But why can't we just love people for people?
Yes.
Why does all that other shit have to come into it?
Because I think it's identity, and I don't know how that happened, but it's, you know, like I think about groups of people, right? I think about like Ford versus Chevy owners. It's all comical, right? But hear me out. Ford versus Chevy owners, you know, for those who are into that automobile stuff, it was a pretty heavy, you know, it was all done in fun, but I'm a Chevy guy, I'm a Ford guy. In my little sphere of the guitars, it was a Gibson and a Fender guy, right? There's always like there's always competition. There's always like an identity that people somewhat like to join. I guess what I'm saying is humans tend to like to join groups.
Yeah.
I have a hard time with it because I'm not wired that way, really. But I'm aware that most humans, in my sphere especially, they pick a side. So that mentality now, where it once was just for fun, sports teams, you know, we have, and even in companies, you know, we have this group and this group, and we're going to have a sales competition, right? It's always there. But now it's down to the bare basics of like philosophy, like personal philosophy. Like, I believe these things, so these are my people, and I believe these things. First off, I would make the bet, Steve, that most humans haven't vetted out their personal philosophy. You really had them sit down and try to articulate it. They don't know what the fuck they believe. But they see something, and that's what I believe, and everything else must be true, too. I'm a strong supporter of the NRA. I'm a strong gun rights supporter.
What does that mean?
Well, to the uneducated mind...
Right?
Or the uneducated thinker, I say. Or I would say the lazy thinker. I'll put it that way. The lazy thinker would take that and then, oh, wait a second. They also believe in these 25 things. That must be what I believe in too. They're my people.
Right.
Meanwhile, 19 of those 20 things you might not agree with.
Right.
But it takes a little bravery, a little humility to admit that. Right?
And the other side to it is people are afraid to say, I don't know how I feel about that.
Bingo. I'll go further. That takes a lot of humility to say you don't know. I'll go further. This is a favorite one of mine. It takes even more courage in this society to claim, yeah, I just don't really care. I'm indifferent on this issue.
Yeah.
Because that'll be opening up to all kinds of scorn. What do you mean you don't have an opinion? Well, because I love doing that. Once I found indifference 4 or 5 years ago, it's made my life, not because it isn't indifference for everything, but things I don't have interest in
or don't affect you.
They don't affect me, or I don't feel strongly about the want to research it because there's only so many hours in a day. I won't create an artificial personal opinion about it because I'm supposed to have one.
Yeah.
That's courage. Especially in light of how caustic it comes when you tell someone on that matter, I'm indifferent to it. See, it's one thing to say, you know, I haven't spent time researching it or whatever, but when you actually say,
well, and that's the thing, right?
Really care.
People aren't willing to say, I'm not educated enough on the topic to make an informed decision. I don't know.
Can we move on? right?
Yeah.
It's like I can't contribute.
Let's move on. Like I don't give a shit that you know, you're a gun rights guy. Like who cares? Can we still be friends?
Exactly. Yeah, because there might be 7 or 8 other big topics, I guess, that you're right in line with.
Yeah,
you know,
like
you have commonality.
maybe I'm really into guitars and fucking real estate.
Yeah,
and I hate guns, but you like guns.
But isn't that the human experience? Isn't it supposed to be that way?
That's how you. That's how you learn things. That's how you evolve.
But if
that's
we're all
how
the same, I don't want to be in a world where we're all the same.
No.
It's
I'm
like
with you.
They need to walk it back a little bit here.
Everybody's different. Everybody has different views. Everybody had different upbringings.
And think about all the shit you've learned in your life from people who thought differently from you. Whether you went into that conversation consciously or you just moseyed right around and you created a relationship, and how you may have seen the world differently through their eyes over time.
Yeah.
You might not even realize it until you step back and go, I've been hanging out with this guy for like 8 years now, and I don't think I ever thought about life like he did, but I'm not congruent on him on this issue. I mean, we are evolving creatures. For love of fuck, why can't we admit it? Have the humility to admit it. Say, hey, if the moment I stop learning and changing is the moment I die.
Yeah,
I'm
with you, man.
I mean, believe me, there are some fundamental things. I think murder is wrong. You know. I think there's a lot of fundamental things that anyone that's with a decent, civil, loving soul would think is wrong. I mean, there's things in society like that, but ultimately, there's a lot of gray.
Yeah.
And to claim that you have an opinion on everything, you don't have enough time to research things appropriately to have an opinion on practically anything.
Yeah.
I mean, really, if you brought a guy wearing a Trump shirt into in for a coffee, you know, he's got the Trump flag and the hat and all that, and you kindly had a conversation with him, not antagonize the guy, but you asked him, you know, would you happen to know what President Trump's stated opinion or views are on this or that, and why does that resonate with you? If you unwound that, I'm just using Trump, I could use the other side too. You unwound it, you would find, I'm guessing, that the person might not really have anything or very little in common with the guy that he thinks is his guy.
Yeah.
You know, but it takes time and humility and the want to be honest with ourselves, brother. And I don't think that, I mean, I think both sides are so full of shit. I really don't identify with any of them.
I mean, everybody has just become less human.
Yeah. We don't need to be.
No. Why can't we not agree and just have a conversation and agree to disagree on a topic?
That used to be a pretty functional way of living. You know, not everybody could do it, but I think more humans did back then.
Yeah.
You know, a decade maybe or farther. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, everybody just has so much hatred for everybody else. Well, fuck them and fuck them. And well, why?
But why are we so quick to jump to the extreme too? Like, you know, if you like the Giants and I like the A's, which in the cities are right next to each other, right? And you're a big Giants fan, I'm a big A's fan. Like, as soon as we're talking baseball and having a good time and eating lunch, and you talk about how you love the Giants, and I'm like, well, fuck them. I'm an A's fan. Fuck you. I mean, why? It sounds comical, but people jump.
That's the way that people are, though.
Jump.
Yeah.
So if you're an ardent Republican and you believe that you are an ardent Republican and that's your personal philosophy and that Trump is your guy, and you see a Biden person over there, he's willingly identifying as a Biden person. They're wearing the hat and wearing the shirt and all that. Is your first inclination to say, fuck you, what's wrong with America? You're an idiot, you're an asshole, to someone you don't even know?
And people do it. It's insane. You don't know anything about that person.
And I venture to say they don't want to find out.
They don't. Because they might have a gut check moment.
And to me, the real dark and sinister gut check moment isn't that you'll find out they're a good person. It's the fact that if they challenge you on your beliefs, you might not be articulate enough or even know yourself enough to explain what the fuck you really believe. And I think that's what most Americans are dealing with right now. They say they're on this team or that team. And if you unwind what the tenets of that team are, I bet you a lot of them won't line up anything with their sensibilities, but they have to be humble enough to go there and think about that.
Yeah.
I don't think they will.
I would agree.
Yeah. How does this get changed, brother? Like, how does this get changed? I mean, do you see it in business? Like, is business still the last bastion that we're holding out hope that, Democrats and Republicans can work together and actually do good business in the spirit of business? Is it still there?
Yeah. I think so. Because the only red and blue don't mean shit in business. Green is the only thing that matters.
Yeah. The dirty capitalism might be the saving grace. Right?
In business. I mean, well, I say that, but maybe that's not true anymore either, too.
So, before we wrap this up here, I do want to talk to you a little bit about where you see us down the line. Have you spent any time like reading or you're looking at this AI thing?
I have not.
Yeah. I mean, like I don't know the ins and outs of it. I can only speak to the fact that it does, on principle, it kind of scares me a little bit. I feel like we're giving up control.
The extent of my AI knowledge is that documentary on Netflix.
I haven't seen that one. What is it? Wait, what
It's
was that?
it's something about like the use of AI in like military environments and how it could be very dangerous if we turn stuff over to AI, but how it's also can be very beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
If it's done correctly, but like where's the line? And I get that. That's the extent of what I know about it.
Do you trust mankind enough to put in some fail safes there so we're not giving it the power to overtake us? In theory?
In general?
Yeah.
In reality? Probably not. Right. So, like, do you remember the line in Men in Black where he said, "A person is smart, people are very dumb"?
Yes.
As much as that's like a funny movie, and that's real, man. A person can be very smart.
And be
people as a group,
crowd mentality,
tend to be very dumb,
or mob mentality.
Yeah, and I think that ties back to all the other crap too, right?
I was just gonna say,
because they're not educated. They're just like, yeah. And I mean, think about all of the psychology studies that have been done on, like, how people will do something because they feel like that's what everybody's doing. And, like, I don't know. It's just, and we're always going to have it, but are there jackasses out there that'll have the knowledge to be able to program that stuff and not put any fail safes in? Of course there will be.
Mm-hmm.
But does that mean everybody has to suffer and it can't be used? Well, I don't know. There's not an easy solution to any of it.
No. And I would you, or how would you respond to this? Do you think that with technology coming as fast as it has over the last, let's just say, 2 decades, is really, it's coming at us at an accelerated pace? Would you agree?
Oh, yeah.
Especially with the amount of media thrown at us,
mm-hmm.
information thrown at us. Do you think part of the anxiety that we're feeling maybe as a society is that we just don't understand, we can't wrap our arms around mentally, metaphorically speaking, about what's coming ahead? We can't even plan for it. Just so much is getting hit at us at such a fast pace that we just can't manage it anymore.
Absolutely, right? And the anxiety and the knowledge of not knowing causes people to lash. So I think it all kind of, ties together. Like, what does the future hold? What are we going to look at? Like, interest rates for houses are 7.5%, 7%. Like,
Seems like it happened like this.
Yeah, like, what's going to happen? Like, where's our business going to go? And if you get so drawn into worrying on what's going to happen in 20 years instead of, okay, let's take things a step at a time and see where we go and see
like more methodical.
Yeah, just take it slower. Slow everything down. Take a minute to think and work your way through it. It may work out better, but at the end of the day, our environment is so right now. Everything is instant gratification. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we're ever going to get to that again.
One of my friends told me about a year into doing this show, Steve, he said to me, he goes, I think I figured out what you're doing. And I go, okay, well, maybe you can tell me because I don't know what I'm doing here. He said, Jimmy Stewart, I think you met Jim once. He said to me, he goes, I think what you're doing is you're just creating a place where you're just slowing everything down. Getting people to sit in the same room, look each other in the eye, and talk to each other. Because that's not the pace that society runs at today. Oh, wow, you know what? I mean, I never thought of it that way, but I think that's kind of, all podcasting in general, if it's done right, I think, conversationally, that's what we're doing. We're slowing down, letting people think. Because I think we respond, right? Like if I say something to you, I'm texting you, you're texting me, and I'm leaving you a voicemail. We're just constantly responding back to the other person. But when you say something here, you have a moment to reflect on it. And it's like I think that's old school conversation that we used to do in our daily lives. We just don't fucking do that anymore.
Well, right, and yeah. So let's think about it that way, right? How often do you have somebody call you, leave you a voicemail, at say 10 o'clock in the morning, and they're calling you again by 2 o'clock in the afternoon because you haven't gotten back to them yet? Like, you left me a fucking voicemail. When I get a chance, I will call you back. Now, if I don't call you back by the next day, by all means, call me again. I had a client sent me an email, or called me. I was in the middle of an inspection. I don't answer my phone unless, like, my wife's blowing me up.
Right.
At an inspection. I don't answer. It's going to voicemail.
Right.
I'm worried about the people in front of me.
Of course.
Calls, leaves me a voicemail. Sends me an email. See the email come through. Sends me a text message. All in a 4-minute window of time. And I'm thinking, holy shit, what's happening? Mm-hmm. So I read the text message. It is the most... We're 5 days out from their appointment, and they want to know who to make the check out to.
It's a demand for immediacy. That's what's going on.
Dude.
That's what's going on.
Calm the fuck down.
That's what's going on now. That's it.
And, like, that's the thing. Like, we've created, like, this instant return. My son, I call him on his cell phone. Or rather, let me take that back. He calls me.
Okay.
He's saying hello before I get the phone to my fucking ear from answering it. I'll hit accept. I'm lifting the phone to my ear. He's like, hello? Hello? I'm like, dude, how many times do I have to tell you? When you call somebody, they speak first.
I get it, man. I get it. Well, that generation doesn't like speaking on the phone.
No.
They're not, I mean, their deference is, texting. That's what they prefer to do, which is another part of the problem. Like, they just don't, and it's not a good or bad thing, subjectively, but it's a skill set that they just have not developed, and it's I can't think the inability to have conversations is scary to me. Yeah. Not be able to do this, put them in a room, because their socialization, they could all be, like you mentioned prior, they could all be in the same little semicircle there and all texting each other. They're not really
and like that's the thing I say to them. I'm like, when you hang out with your friend, like, what do you do? You can't carry on a conversation with somebody.
Right.
And it's not just him.
Oh, no, not at all. And it's funny, depending on what generation, as every generation, there's every year is a different group of kids. Depending on how long ago they were born, they tend to have a little more social skills. And with every year that goes by, they tend to generally speaking, they're not equipped for socialization as we think of socialization prior. They're just not equipped for it.
Well, and I guess the laziness of parenting could have a lot to do with it.
Oh, most definitely.
Hey, here's this tablet. Go play. Leave me alone.
Most definitely. But think about this. What about the generation? Think about this. Some of these very, very young parents that are having kids right now in 2023, they themselves were in that generation that never picked up the phone. Never, these are babies having kids, and they are not equipped for traditional conversational, interplay. They're just not equipped for it. And I get it. It comes back to, this is the reality. This is physical reality here. And it sounds so stupid, but I think there's validity to it. The virtual reality is actually now weighing more than the physical. Certain groups of people are living in the virtual most of the time.
Well, and here's the other thing. Why is it, like, Google was created in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
It became a thing after I graduated high school.
Mm-hmm.
I think Google is the fucking coolest thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
I can get the answers to anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's at my fingertips. I probably use Google 5 times a day. Now, do you have to sift through some bullshit? Of course.
Mm-hmm.
But my son will be like, what is this? Pick up the fucking computer that's in your hand that you never put down and look it up. It's gotten so bad that they just expect it to be fed directly to them. And then he does that and he goes, hey Siri. Exactly. No, type it, man.
Exactly.
How lazy can we be?
Yeah.
And I definitely make it worse. Like, we have a smart home system and there's lights and stuff like that in our house that we control by voice or
under the guise of convenience.
Yes, and it is super convenient.
Certainly. But
I also won't hesitate to get up and go do something if I have to.
1,000,000%. Yeah, and Google was created the greatest thing about the web for me was that, the dial-up modem. Click, turn around, watch an episode of reruns of MASH. Oh, it loaded. Turn back around, 20 minutes later, the page is loaded. The point was I could go there with intent to inquire about things that I was curious about and get answers.
Yeah.
That was like, I remember cognitively thinking to myself, this is the coolest thing in the world. Like, now the answers to just about everything are at my fingertip if I take the intention to go out and ask for it.
Yeah.
But now the act of going out and asking for it is too much. We don't want to do that. We expect it to be delivered in our face just because we're thinking about it. I mean, it sounds a little ridiculous, but that's kind of where we're going. We just don't want to exude effort anymore.
Tell me that our phones don't listen to us.
100%. Oh, there's no doubt about it. If anyone pays attention, guarantee if it's been on during this podcast, you'll drive home and things we talked about will show up in your reel.
Yeah.
Advertisements will show up in your reel. 100%.
Yeah. It's crazy.
But we go to it. We go to it willingly, right?
Absolutely, we do.
And
we expect it.
Yeah, we want to bitch and complain about it, but we still want our phones. We still want the things that, But to me, the web was a tool. A tool to make money, a tool to make my life convenient, a tool to have some fun, streaming movies and things. I get it. But it's now crossed over to like dependency with society as opposed to it being a tool.
It's 100% dependency. I don't have cable. If we don't have internet in my house, our TVs are useless. Because I also don't have a DVD player.
Television. Who watches television anyways anymore? If it's not sports, I don't want to see it.
Right? Like, I mean...
I get it, man.
And I turmoiled over, cutting cable.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, what are we going to
So what's your thought now that you've done it? Is it
It's the best thing we ever did.
Yes.
We saved so much money.
Maybe I should go that route too.
Yeah.
Maybe I should go that route too.
I was so worried about all these things. I figured it all out. How do I watch this? How can I watch that? You figure it out.
Yeah.
It's streamed somewhere.
It's like, and it's funny. I'm the biggest hypocrite. I'm bashing technology, yet I'm producing this show and sending it out into the web. You know, it's like, yeah, I get it. I don't bash the technology. I bash our stupidity in using it or succumbing to it.
Yes. Use the technology.
Be manipulated by it. That's what I should say.
Yeah. We need to use the technology to our benefit.
Yes.
Not make us lazy because we have it.
It should be a great tool. Yeah. I mean, it should be an actual tool, and I would love for children would view it that way and be explained what an actual tool, an instrument is to enable your life to be better, right? Yeah. But it's just not. Is it I'll leave you with this last question. Is it a right? I mean, do you think that we've reached a point where you need it so bad to function society now that the internet should be a right, a human right?
If you'd asked me that 4 years ago, I would say no. But it has become, since COVID, schools went online. My son doesn't get books at school anymore. He gets a laptop.
Mm-hmm.
So if we don't have internet at home, he can't do homework. So if schools are going to expect it to be that way, then yes, because everybody has a right to education.
Mm-hmm. That's
if schools go back to
one of the
books.
One of the arguments.
If schools go back to books and handwriting things, then no, I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah,
because you can go to the library and do research.
Right.
But if you expect my child to complete this homework and the only thing you're giving him is a Chromebook to do it, you can't expect him to have to go to the library every single day to do his homework. That's absurd.
Mm-hmm.
So in that aspect, yes.
There's a really good public service commercial out there. I just saw it a couple of days ago where a young boy does not have home internet and he's worried about his assignment and he's sitting in the back seat of like his parents' van or whatever, and they pull up to a cafe and they sit in the parking lot so he can log in. It's just it just struck me as being really kind of sad. You know, he was, the commercial did what it was supposed to do. It pulled at the heartstrings, tugged at the heartstrings, and that's what it did. But it was articulating, this child is a decent student, but very economically challenged family, right? And they have no internet, and he had to take this school-given laptop and sit in his car and get free internet outside of a cafe to do his homework. And it just kind of, I think we're so dependent on it now. And so many government agencies and business agencies, things that we need for our daily lives are requiring us to go there to interact. I think it's the point now where you have to kind of say, it goes against my anti-capitalistic nature, but I think you almost have to say it should be a human right. It's changed society that much now.
And I'm not saying, by no means am I saying everybody needs gig speed internet at home.
Oh yeah, no, just basic, the ability to, although that gig speed is the bomb. I have it and I'm so spoiled now.
Me too.
Yeah, I mean I can't go back, especially editing these shows. I have to have it.
Yeah, I could never go back.
I can't afford it up here. I got it at home. Hey, buddy, I really appreciate you doing this, man. I know it's crazy free-form talk, but that's what we do here, and it means a lot to me. That I will tell you, you have made a huge difference in my real estate practice over the years, and you've given me a level of peace of mind that I know my clients are going to be well taken care of and given the truth always, so they can make good decisions. And I want to thank you publicly for that.
I appreciate it, man.
It means a lot. It means a lot, man.
In 2019, I was terrified to step out and do things. My wife had just lost her job. It was shit or get off the pot. This better fucking work. And I sat down with her and I said, what do you think? And she goes, we don't know if we don't try.
Yep.
In the response that I got from, at that time, the very small core of agents that I worked with and knew really well, was absurdly humbling. And to think from, 4.5 years later that I could be where I am with where my business is to where I was then. I mean, there's no way
None of us are surprised
that I could have ever imagined that.
I know, but none of us are surprised.
Yeah.
We just knew. Yeah. We were extremely confident. As a matter of fact, we were at the point where we figured, we might as well enjoy Steve while we have his full undivided attention, because when he grows, it's going to be crazy. and you're about at that point now. Right?
Well,
It's
yeah,
crazy.
right. And that's the thing. Like, I was talking to Jeremy the other day about this, and there was periods in the last 2 years that I lost inspections because I couldn't get them in people's time frames. I didn't have room. In 2020 and in 2021, my wife forced me to take time off. She was like, you are going to run yourself into the ground. You need to take a week off. And I'm like, but we're going to miss out on inspections. She goes, I don't give a shit.
That's right.
Like, for your own mental health
Right.
and physical health, you need to take a week. And, we had the conversation, and I was at that point that I needed to bring more people in. And I almost don't want to be that busy because I don't want to do that. Because the entire company has been built on me. And that's what people want. These agents that I've built relationships with, they are personal relationships.
Correct. It's a dilemma. It's the old lifestyle versus legacy business. Are you going to build are you going to grow the biggest lifestyle business that you want and you can handle, or are you going to take that next step and build a corporation? And they're two entirely different animals, not right or wrong. The Boogie Street years, you remember, we've got mutual friends that were around me back then, and I was positioned to take it to the next level, but I couldn't break out of my own desire to be in control of everything, right? So it didn't serve me well by just staying a lifestyle business.
And then to the other side of that, right? My first step out to being able to bring somebody in, I'm not going to have a ton of work for them.
That's the risk.
And how am I going to ask somebody, hey, come work for me like 2 days a week?
Right.
It's something that's very specialized.
Absolutely.
How do I do that?
Yeah, and no, and that's
and then be able to
risk.
pay. Like, I can't take money out of my pocket. This is how I feed my family. In order to bring somebody in, but if we can grow together, and that's kind of where I screwed up. I had somebody approach me who wanted to come work with me when I still worked for somebody else, and that person put a kibosh on it. Because I don't know why. For whatever reason. And now it's something that we could have done together and overlap things, and they're successful. And I respect what they do. But the hindsight of it, 6 months after that conversation with them, when I couldn't help them because my hands were tied, I'm gone off on my own, and I could have fucking helped them.
Yeah, but in hindsight, it's a lesson, right? You just learn. You've learned from that.
Yeah.
The fact that you can sit here and articulate it now obviously shows you've learned from it. You just don't make that same mistake again.
Never.
I appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks,
and they can
man.
read it. Is it K2inspections.com?
K2 Property Inspections.
K2propertyinspections.com, and you also are on Facebook as well, too.
Yeah.
And Steve Kowatic's on Facebook. If you need a home inspection, even if you are thinking about selling your house, pre-listing inspection, consultation. You're buying a house. If you're just curious about the status of the house and you have no intention on selling, but you kind of want someone to come in and maybe give you the inspection you never received, never had, and you ultimately want a user manual to your house, this is the man, my go-to inspector. But I'll have you back, buddy. You got lots of ideas for some free-form discussion here in the Four Friends series that we do. So now you're hooked in. So it took me a while to get him here, but we hooked him in. I appreciate it, Stevie.
Thanks, man.